our next part of our show, we're going to be, the topic is Stop Reinventing the Wheel. Oh, love that so much. Benchmarking best practices to explore and define the right prefabrication opportunities for your project. So you guys can come up on stage, and ladies can come up on stage. I'll introduce you if that's possible. Sean Maley, Senior Associate at Stantec. Oh, I know Susie Hall. Susie Hall, come on up. Founder and President of the Cornerstone Collaborative. Jim Barrett couldn't join us, but we have Kurt Gavalier, Director of Offsite Construction. Turner, where are you, Kurt? That's a new role, isn't it? Yeah, I knew that. I talked to my buddies over there that you were going to fill a position like that. Good for you. Good job. By the way, you know things are changing when Turner has a position called Director of Offsite Construction. That's good. Oh, and Maren Pastar, Global Technology Leader, Vertical Information Modeling at Jacobs. Come on up. And Taylor Hamblett, Design, Innovation, and Integration Specialist at McCarthy Building Systems. Please join us up on stage. So there's, again, on Slido, you can ask all of these people questions, and that would be really, really helpful. Oh, and one more. Sorry, I forgot Jody Subert. Where are you, Jody? Prefabrication Manager, Suburban Enterprises. It's not like you're little that I could have missed you. You're kind of tall.
You, Amy.
Well, I just kind of say what comes to my head. You know what I mean?
I know. He's not just security.
You know, no filter. I know that's not obvious. But, well, guys, thank you. And ladies, thank you so much for joining us. And this is a great group. So, again, we're using Slido. We have some questions, but let's make it interactive, if you wouldn't mind asking some questions. So let's start with this. How have you, or do you think that we can begin like normalizing and naturalizing, providing a framework for how we consider prefabrication and all the options that we have on a project? How do we start doing that? How do we start thinking about that? Anyone want to take that question first? Susie, I'll pick on you because I know you. How about that? Let's start with you, ladies first.
Sure, can you hear me okay? So I've got a unique background. My dad was a major college football coach, and so I believed in putting the team and the plan together at the very beginning. Having a leadership is super important, and not just jumping right into, we're going to fab this unit. So that context, depending on what type of project it is very important. So the Cornerstone Collective, we plug and play different teams. So we put the teams together with the goal in mind for the project itself, and then we quarterback that all the way through. My dad coached Nick Saban in college, so I've had real firsthand experience growing up in that environment. When everyone's talking together, they have a playbook, a game plan like we've talked about.
Yes.
Makes for best projects out there. Also, the integrated design process, not just the project delivery, is super, super important.
Right. And Susie, tell us what your company does. When I get to each of you first, I'll have you do an intro as well.
Sure.
So tell us about your company.
So I have three. One's a design company, one's procurement, but the Cornerstone Collective is where I've brought in a lot of different associates, different fields, architecture, engineering, sustainability, interior design around the world. So we have global capacity and abilities, and it's above and beyond individual companies. So we're better together, we can do more together, and being able to plug and play again with the talent, pick and choose for the right team is what makes us nimble, and it makes us, be able to deliver those better projects at a higher level.
Fantastic.
More integrated.
Who else wants to talk about that? Let me go to my guys at Turner. Let me pick on you since you're new there. How long have you been at Turner?
Almost 21 years.
I know, that's what you guys are, like lifers, right?
We are.
Okay, good. So I always say it's the 7-year mark or the lifer at Turner, right? It's
that's
like
about
that's
right,
sort of
yeah.
what happens. Okay,
right.
You're the lifer side. That's good. So what happens? How do you start and kick off these projects? How do you get a framework? Like, how early do you need to start? Because we've heard a lot of people here talking about the fact that they're not in soon enough.
Yeah, that's a tough one for us. So we start roughly 1,500 projects a year, and it's anywhere from, fitting out a small classroom to SoFi Stadium. So we get a lot of projects that come in and all different phases of the design and pre-construction process. We still do a lot of lump sum work too, right? I mean, I'm from DC, federal work, a lot of lump sum. So when you have a team come to you say, hey, we have this project, we want to do prefab. It's like, well, we have to figure out what that framework looks like for them based on their project. And so we've started doing that. We have our Turner Engineering Group is one of the services we provide, and we have started getting into the process of breaking projects down and really looking for the opportunities, no matter what phase the project is in. Sometimes it makes more sense to influence the design, like in a design build. But if the project is pretty well baked, well, as baked as we think it is when it's 100% CDs, we can still try to help our project teams figure out what's a good fit for them. So we're really right now focused on standardizing that process, building a team of people that are focused on offsite construction. So that's part of my role too, is to lead that team and build that team.
Or prefabrication, whatever, got it.
What did I say, construction?
It's okay, I'm just joking.
Sorry, prefabrication, offsite construction. And then we're really looking to build out the network of partners, right? We want to make sure we understand who's out there that can help us, right? We don't know everybody.
Right.
So we're really trying to reach out and understand the supply chain and look into different supply chains too. There's lots of interesting ways to build out there. That
I have a lot of old friends at Turner, right? You know that? I think you guys have, interestingly enough, I heard Ben Kaplan say, I interviewed him in a webinar recently on data centers, and something he said I thought was very interesting coming from Turner, and that was, we've realized we need to be the best integrators of these assemblies on site, better than anyone. That's what Ben said in that interview. I have to be controversial, so I always have to push back, right? This is not going to be best for every single project you have if you're new to this. I always say easier is my route, for the record. So my only suggestion to anybody who's getting into this new, that's starting a brand new program, a big new program, some of the guys are going to come to you and ask for this stuff. But you probably, and I'm sure you're already doing this, want to target the easiest jobs first, because that's where you're going to see some successes. Don't start, by the way, that's my problem. I've started on somebody would say, hey, we need data centers that are dropped out of airplanes. Can you do it? And I was like, well, sure. Well, maybe we should build some data centers first before we figure out how to drop them out of airplanes. But I'm just saying, we had done that. Just saying.
Yeah, we don't we're good at running through walls. Where's Colby Swanson said that yesterday, right?
Yes.
Throw the Twinkies out, get all hyped up and break down the wall, and then we get up and do it again. We're trying to not do that anymore.
Yes. Hey, the good news is they have a person now that's full-time job is to actually think and talk and make these things happen at Turner. So thank you for coming and joining us. I've had a long relationship with those guys. So, okay, what do you think, Jody? What do you think about what we said? Is there a framework? How do we get this going early? How do we start normalizing that so it's not like a story I told yesterday where they're doing IPD and they did all the kickoff meetings, but none of the MEP guys were there?
Well, I think when you mentioned productization yesterday, a lot of the trade partners' eyes went big, because a lot of times what happens is we try to standardize on many, many different things, and then we're slapped on the wrist because it's not that way. We have to change it here. We have to move it there, right? So I think the role or the path forward is actually something called, what we do is we take a product and we want to productize it, right? So we configure it. So the configuration is more choice-based, but it's still a product.
Yeah.
So you can standardize on the materials, you can standardize on everything, even the framework of where it fits.
Right.
But you have choices, right? So I think what you mentioned, I think everybody was like, there's no variability there.
That's not true.
And I know, but I think what happened yesterday was a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, I got to get a product, and then no one's going to buy it, right? On the trade side.
Where are you, Billy? I'm going to keep pointing at every time somebody says that. There you are, Billy. What if I make something and nobody buys it? Then you probably didn't make something that fit within what people actually want. Just saying, there are ugly dresses that stay on the rack all the time. But go ahead.
But Lonnie Compton brought up something in one of the discussions earlier in the week on Tuesday, and he talked about how you can actually build that into your model.
Yes. Did you see GSK? Interestingly enough, so there's sort of like baby steps, and then we get to the mid-range of productization and then optimized productization. If you're using parametric design tools from a manufacturing setting, I told people I wouldn't say this, because, I got to get on a tangent just because you said it. Do you know how I always say there's a 200 and a 250 and a 300 that Kohler makes, and you can't buy a 217.5? It's not because they couldn't make a 217.5. It's not because they're not using manufacturing tools parametrically that wouldn't allow for that. At this point in time, they have such hard-coded factories, hard-coded supply chains for a 200, a 250. You all don't. If you're using parametric design like GSK is talking about, so I don't want to get ahead, I don't want to scare you off, but you're telling me you have to tell them that, Amy, right? So you still need your standards, but if you do it in the right technology, using the right parametric design software, you can, don't tell, if you're not so hard-coded, you could make it, Billy Bullock, you could have a 217.5, okay? You could start making 217, you could adjust when that customer wants a 217.5, and you'll still know you can make it, and it's still your supply chain that supports it. So don't get scared off. Like I said, you could have one dress and one dress only, and I couldn't give you a different color button. You know what I mean? Don't worry about that.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Once you configure that stuff, after a year or two of making it,
right,
you're going to be able to say, well, this is what we, 95% of what we build, this is what our standard.
Yes, except you can't put nothing into the configurator. Start with some standard product that you think most people would want to buy. You can't start with nothing. How about my friend from Stantec? Even though we had
I still don't agree with you.
Okay, good. You don't have to.
No, but
yet.
So
I'm just kidding.
I'm from Stantec. I'm an architect, and I'm a lab planner, and I do research labs. And my journey into prefab was based on I want a higher level of control of the flexibility I see when I go onto the site and things are built. So I started realizing that when we get there, we had planned for this flexibility, and because of the current processes sort of broke, the quality was there, but it didn't, what was built didn't respond to what I had planned with the researchers that he was going to do 2 or 3 years down the line. So that flexibility was being hampered by other things. So what I thought about coming home one night, I was like, what if I use, this is before I even knew about prefab. So I was like, what if I start to bring this prefabrication idea into my documents in SD, use it as a toolkit. Use something, start to design using these modules, using these kit of parts, using things that I can find, and then develop them and incorporate them into the documents. And then if I can at the time, go find someone who can do this. Even if I can't guarantee they're going to be on the project, at least I get the information to know,
Yeah, they don't love that part. You're like, suck me out of my
side.
information that you need to do to inform your documents, even if you're not going to get the job. I'm sorry, I just need to say that part.
But
what
we start the wheel to move. Every time we do that as an architect, early in the project, it starts that wheel moving. You might not get this one, but you'll get the next one. I start getting a relationship. We're starting to get more and more architects on board to do this early on in the project. So what it does then is when we get into the next phase of the project, the contractors are more on board, and we really get some great ideas, because when the CM comes on board, then we'd say, hey, listen, we baked this into the project. We want to do this. Can you help us to take this to a new level? So that's when we start getting the trade partners really involved in a little bit more. Now, right now, we're sort of still involving a lot of the owners in having these ideas of what we can do for them in prefab. And most of the time, I'm not dealing with the Marriotts. I'm not dealing with, I'm dealing with my last project was at Yale. So these are the kind of things that these one-off projects that really have great opportunities, especially in research labs. So as we've been talking all along, it's these choices. If I can build a movement early on in a project with architects, we'll move that dial. It's similar to what we did with Lean. It's similar to what we did with LEED. I mean, LEED in the very beginning, it was, we really, really tried to push this thing, and it started to pull people into the industry. And now it's mainstream. So if we can get it from an early point on an architect talking about it in schematic design. So every project that I go after now, proposals even, and I say, listen, at some point early in the project, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to look through your project for opportunities for prefab. Doesn't necessarily mean we're going to do it, but we're going to look at opportunities, and we'd like you guys to explore that journey with us. So, I mean, that's where I'm trying to do it, because I'm coming at it from I want to be able to control my design at a higher level, because I want my ideas and our team's ideas and the owner's thoughts to transfer through into the construction process and then to the longevity of the building. So that's how I got into it.
So interestingly enough, I did Tomcat Hall in the early 2000s for Yale University. We did a volumetric dorm over there. I'm a lot older than I look in the prefab world, I say. But Taylor, let me ask you a question. So let's talk about normalizing. Here's something I want to normalize. I'd like people that make products to be partnered up front in those playbooks like GSK asked for. I don't want fluidity of by the way, I don't know if you know this, maybe you do, I'm sure you do. These guys don't all make products exactly the same way. They have their own manufacturing processes. They have their own supply chain partners that support their manufacturing process, right, Billy Bullock? Your central utility plant doesn't look like somebody else's prefabricated central utility plant, right? So he doesn't want to give you his ideas up front so that you go bid it out to somebody else. So how do we normalize partnering? That's really important for me to understand. How do we normalize this process so the partners that make those products that we're all telling them they have to make, how do they get to that front of the process so that it's their product, so it's their piece that gets there? Because we don't have scale of like make something, everybody makes that right now. We don't have that.
I think a lot of it starts with declared intent, meaning McCarthy, for example, to your earlier question, has started the offsite production process by declaring our intent that that is how we want to do business. That's how we want to make it a best practice. Well, to your question now, I would start with the client. There's a reason the client's building the building. Why? They didn't just wake up one day and decide that they wanted to flow a lot of their capital through a lot of shops and designers. There's a purpose that they're after. All right, well, let's make sure that purpose is very clear. Because with that declared intent, now you can invite people to the party and let them do what they do best.
Yes.
And so there's an outdated control model that says, no, it must be this exact shape or form because I want this performance out of it.
Right.
Well, how can we split that? Can we focus on the performance and allow the product side of it to meet that performance?
Yes.
And even the discussion you were having earlier about what happens when you need that piece right in the middle. There's a huge industry pimping rides for cars, motorcycles.
Yes.
That all started off of a standard production line, and somebody went, wait a minute, I can tweak that a little bit.
Yes.
That's actually where I see the value from the design side as well. Designers are excellent problem solvers. I want to invite designers to the table and say, hey, help us pimp our ride. I don't want to waste your time asking you to detail bathrooms.
Right.
You know how to do that. I can open the code book and look at the requirement for bathroom.
Right.
I want you focused on the real challenging design problems that this client's facing to meet their business model. So I think it starts by declaring the intent and taking the process as an invitation process. Ben Callum in our company recently put out on after lean construction, put out an article about the master builder.
Yes, I saw that
discussion, that model, and he asked me, Taylor, what do you think about an article that says, let's kill the master builder idea? And I said, oh, let's write it. I love that. Because it's an outdated idea. The new master builder is the group.
Yes.
The way we can collectively work together.
I hear often a lot of 10-year-old thought processes still lingering around. The same thing with the associations yesterday when I asked them about, people actually think you can't get prefab on, and the response from Sean was immediately like, you're joking. People actually say that still? And I was like, oh yeah. He goes, that's so 10 years ago. That was in the prep meeting. And I was like, no. CMs and GCs tell me that every day still. And he was like, that's crazy. So I think, yes, we have to let go of burn down some of these, things we've been saying for 10 years. I love what you said about Pimp My Ride. Can I have a Pimp My Ride with Ben Callum's name on the back? I want by the way, I love Ben Callum. You're lucky to have him over there at McCarthy. So, Maren, what do you think about how we can start normalizing this process?
First of all, I want to start seconding some of the comments here as well, because no two projects are the same. No two clients are the same. Clients need different things, and the nature of projects is very, very different. So to start standardizing that framework and try to understand, hey, this is the solution for every single problem, well, we don't even know what the problem is to begin with. So rather than trying to standardize the solution itself, I'd like to move into that process of standardizing the process of understanding what the problem is.
Yes,
right?
Okay.
Understanding the why, the values. Every client has those values. Every client values different things. So how can we collectively come together as a team and understand what is the right type of workflow to achieve those values, to solve that problem? So,
right.
Again, and that's one thing that Jacob, just like Turner, we start all different kinds of projects for all different kinds of markets, federal, private, healthcare, project management, program management, architecture, engineering. We do just about everything out there. So understanding what is the right type of workflow, what is the right type of opportunity, what are the challenges and constraints we have to work within,
yes.
And how can we, like I said, collectively as a team come to help our owners understand, first of all, educate everybody what can be done,
right.
How are we going to do it, what tools are we going to use to do it with, but most importantly, why are we going to do it?
So interestingly enough, I think what you're saying is absolutely correct. When I was a consultant before I joined Autodesk, I worked for guys like McCarthy and Turner and Skanska and all these big general contractors. Ask me how many, and directly for the owners, ask me how many of those kickoff meetings, even for the same contract methodology, were the same.
Yeah, no,
How many of my frameworks for that were the same?
yeah,
None.
probably not.
None of them. So I interpret what you just said is, listen, not every building needs the same building. We all get that. Not every building needs the same products feeding it. I get that too. Everyone here gets that. We all know you're not going to have the same mechanical electrical systems for a data center as for a hotel. I get it. We all understand that. But I go to all around the world, different frameworks. None of them are the same. Why is you have to start asking yourself, where are my owners? Raise your hand, where's my owners, our owners reps? Why are you moving towards a playbook? Because every time you go to these kickoff meetings, it's a completely different process. So you have to start taking some control. They can't get consistency when your framework incorporates prefab 3 steps down the line and someone does it up front and somebody does the BIM modeling standards 17 meetings down and somebody does it in the first meeting. They're not getting consistency or certainty of the data. Today, stick around for the owners. I think you had it on the money. We are not creating, by the way, I'm sitting on one right now, a standards meeting. It's about how do we morph AWP, advanced work packaging, and lean principles and take the best of both worlds. You don't even know what where's Clark Ellis? He's coming later. You don't even know what those meetings are like. Why? Even when you're doing advanced work packaging, nobody does any of those meetings the same. Even when you're doing lean, no one does. So we have to stop with the fluidity of something. By the way, you can't pimp somebody's ride if there's no ride, exactly. Right? Okay, just checking. Sometimes I speak, so it's not. I'm not telling you. I'm asking sometimes. Okay, you know. So if we all know like that's ideal and we want to achieve this, what do you think is actually stopping us? Like if what I say seems logical and what we are all saying seems somewhat logical, why aren't we doing this? Like I don't think it's hard to prefabricate a skid. No one here will tell you it's hard. What's stopping us? Why don't you answer that? That'd be great.
There's, in my opinion, 3 primary things that are the problem. Number 1, education.
What?
Education.
Education.
People don't understand what the possibilities and what the opportunities are. And we start project with preconceived notions about, hey, I've done this 10, 20 different times before. I'm going to do it the same way I did it before, but because apparently it worked. And that's a problem. It's a collective approach that we need to educate folks to understand, educate owners, educate everybody part of the team to understand what the opportunities are.
Right.
The second part is the contracts. Contracts are still a very, very big barrier. Reliability, understanding who needs to do what, when, right? Who's responsible, who's liable. Architects, engineers, you're not supposed to do means and methods, really. If we're not doing it, then we're missing on so much opportunity to serve our owners and our clients, to bring the best of both worlds together, if you will. And the third part is standards. You know, right now, owners that are not as well versed in technology say, "Oh, we want this project to be BIM." Well, BIM is not a standard. It's so far from it. It's the opposite of standard. So starting to embrace companies or organizations like NIBS, like ISO, you know, ISO 9650. Yep. We've got a lot of great projects in the UK that are starting to go down that path of prescribing exactly how you deliver those projects, what the naming conventions would be, what are the standards. And as we embrace that as a culture in North America as well, as we start defining the deliverables before we start ahead of the project, we're going to be far more successful in executing projects the right way, the most meaningful way that makes the most sense.
What do you think, my friend from Stantec?
Yeah, I agree what he said. We see it on all sides. So on owner side, we want to do this, and we have a hard time talking them into it because they have a different, perception of what things could be done. Just like you said, you need to educate people on what exactly the capabilities are. On the other side, the contractor side, the site superintendents, and we'll never be able to do this. We've been able to train people that, hey, look, we have results. We're putting 60 to 80 feet of corridor in a day in a research lab that, that's never been done before, at least by those particular people. So that's another education that we need to have to do.
Yeah.
And then also at the same time, the education wise is, architects and engineers. I mean, we're really stuck in our ways. So if you can find one that really wants to do this, embrace them and then tell them, hey, this is a great idea. So it's a lot about, the idea of education and stuff. And then also on the far side, working with the trades is sometimes when we work with the trades localized. So if we're going to build it local, move it in local, it's okay. But when we start transporting it across state lines, that's when we get a little more difficult.
Yeah, let's stop fighting over Iowa jurisdictions.
It's almost like like at Stantec and Jacobs, we're all a bunch of different offices that are all working together as a family. It's almost like if the trade unions would start to become universal across borders, it would become an interesting,
especially when people
interesting
start
approach.
shipping in stuff from China, but or Poland. Kurt, I have a question for you.
Sure.
I'm perplexed by the notion that we can't talk owners into this. You just said in your earlier statement, like, you're basically, seems like you're getting all these jobs thrown at you, like how we can do that. Like, I know what Turner talks about. I've been there. Do you have a problem getting owners to be interested in this?
I think in some cases, no. I think some of them are demanding it, right?
Yes.
They're requiring it.
Good.
And then we do have some that it's a foreign concept, right? They just want their facility to be operational as fast as possible, and they want to do with what, go with what they know, right?
What do you think the difference of, by the way, I just talked at CURT, which is a big owners conference and big workshops. I was on a panel with 2 different owners. Why do you think there are different, like, what's different about that owner that's demanding it? So these guys, teach these people in the audience. What's different from, why is an owner, like you've heard from GSK, demanding it, and an owner that you're having a hard, why are you even trying to talk somebody into it? Like, what's the difference of those types of owners?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a great answer for that. I think just some of them are stuck in their ways, if I could say that, right? And they know one way to do it. They've penciled their pro forma the exact way that they know how to do it, and they're going to get to their bottom line, right? But then you have some owners that they see the benefits, they see the long-term benefits, they see that they can reduce their schedule. Schedule reliability is really big for some of these owners that are requiring it, right? They want to know when you're going to deliver the product. And sometimes it's hard to do that in a traditional stick-built environment, right? There's too many variables, so we're trying to reduce the variables. I don't know why owners are different. I think we could ask ourselves the same thing about the GCs or our subcontractors. Why are some doing it? Why are some not?
Yeah, go back to that transformation framework we talked about yesterday. Some of them are just not ready, and you shouldn't. Honestly, I always say easier, easier, easier. Go for the easier ones. I don't need it. I'm pretty tired of talking people into stuff when there's plenty of people demanding it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we go to where the grass is green.
Go where the grass is green, exactly. Don't ship very expensive air either, right? Susie,
That's right.
What do you think about all this? What do you think about how we make this more normal, how we make frameworks for this? How do we not have to push rocks up hills?
Yeah. So I've been in this modular offsite industry for about 5 years now. We were brought in by a large modular manufacturer. They had a scope gap for interior design of the guest rooms. So that was our first foray in. And it was really surprising to me how disjointed things were, right? All these silos, people weren't talking to each other. Totally agree with the education piece. I think people within our industry, we all need more education, but outside of this industry, people have no idea.
Right.
You know, a lot of times you'll mention modular and it's like, oh, is that a mobile home? Or what is that? Or offsite, what does that mean? And so I spent a lot of time explaining even just those words. And starting with that, we've had a lot of opportunity outside of this industry.
Right.
So the more we can engage that conversation, the better.
You work in a different, we're having a little disagreement, Stan Tech and I. You work in a part of the industry ecosystem. You're doing a lot of multi-story housing. You're doing mostly on the housing side and some of
and
the
hotels.
Stuff. Okay, those guys, they think trailers still sometimes. None of these guys that do hospitals and hotels, like the heavy MEP stuff. Do you think GSK thinks they're getting trailers? Like, I would say the perception conversation applies to where she works within the ecosystem. I don't think any hospital or pharma or data center, unless they wanted a containerized data center and they called it out, like, none of these MEP subcontractors that are making complex MEP that most guys can't even draw, let alone understand, think it's trailers. Would you agree? Give me a show of applause if you think what you build and the MEP side of this is trailers. No one's gonna clap, exactly.
But when you're talking about the 1% that get it, or maybe the 5%.
1%.
But wait. There is a huge amount of clients and project types that are out there that don't get it right now. That's what we
should not be going after those, by the way. You're right.
But on my side, I want to go after those. Because
you want to?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
We want to be able to we want to get that kind of projects. We want that kind of work. And we want to be able to push that bar and raise that elevation for those particular clients. Now, there's some clients that won't embrace it. You know, they're just not going to do that. But there's other clients that just, they don't, like they haven't had the education to really understand what the benefits are. So their perception of what they get tends to change on the idea of prefabrication. And I jokingly said, you know, in a thing about, you know, they think they're getting a FEMA trailer. That's not necessarily true, but there is a perception of what they think they're getting. They don't know what they're getting. So when I start saying, the benefits are going to be, I mean, safety is just unreal. You really need to start looking at that to the particular clients. That starts to get it. But I've got some Fortune 500 research clients that I'm working with that I'm bringing this stuff up with them, and they're like, that's a great idea. We've never heard of that before. I mean, and these guys are worldwide. So if they're not getting it, there's other ones that are smaller that are taking advantage of, that we can take advantage of too, as far as the projects. So as a group to educate, and that's how we're really gonna get the more productization, is getting more people involved. It's similar to what LEED did on products.
Yeah, LEED has a great framework, right? So speaking of a framework, they're not trying to solve every problem, but giving different categories. And at the end of the day, a lot of these buildings are for people. It's all about the human experience. So we spend a lot of time on the front end talking and structuring things. What we focus on as well is what does it, feel like when that professor is expecting that piece of art hung on his wall? That's really the impact of what we're all doing.
I don't know, for the record, where are my lean friends out there? Anyone from LCI? And I talk at LCI all the time. What percentage of jobs are done these days with IPD projects? I think they have a framework. I wouldn't say it's a widely accepted framework globally. I don't agree. I think the numbers don't agree with that. Would McCarthy help me out? Like IPD jobs, it's not 50% of your jobs at this point. Prefab, by the way, you're using on more than 50% of your jobs right now if they're in particular markets, right? Pharma, data centers, healthcare. That's more than 50%, right? IPD, what percent? Less than what?
Probably less than 1.
Okay, less than 1%. So I want everybody to and don't take that the wrong way. I think it's a good framework. I think if the best thing we have is to collaborate up front, we probably have missed the boat on something. But let's just call it out, and that's me. Let's call it out. We don't have a standard kickoff with a framework for how we integrate the best practices for things like prefabrication that's standard across. That's why owners are coming to playbooks. That's why the owners that have the most to gain. By the way, on that CURT meeting, there was a guy who was in 6 states, big energy company, on my thing, and he said, I don't even care about any of this. I push that risk onto my contractor and my designer. And by the way, he was giving both performance and prescriptive specs at the same time for the same thing. So I was like, good luck on that one. But he wants to push it down. The other guy, he's building in 50 different countries. He needs the same consistency for his manufacturing. That owner's like, he said right to the other owner, I don't have that luxury. I can't push this risk onto the designer. And because I'm working with a designer in Beijing one day and Iowa the next.
Well, what's our culture and how we deal with people too? Because I've worked on highly collaborative projects that were traditional design build, that were IPD, that were all kinds of contract models. And yet the delivery methodology wasn't that different because we had a culture as a team that we were respecting each other. And what are we doing to bring that culture of collaboration? And yes, a formwork can help us, but if you don't have the culture of that collaboration, it's going to be hard. Part of this is the human equation. Why aren't people doing this? Well, because we're human beings and we're scared of change.
Right.
And we are programmed to act out of fear. So I'd like to flip the script, and instead of asking, how do I talk someone into it? Because if I'm talking somebody into something, I'm hitting their fear point. I'd much rather have the discussion be, what is it you're worried about? Let's walk through that. Because if they see the process as their concerns being addressed, they're far more likely to embrace this. Because I look at the off-site production methodology, one of its huge benefits that I don't hear a lot of people talk about is transparency. If you're a builder, if you're an owner who built 100 buildings, you're a very educated owner. If you're an owner who's building your first building, walking onto a job site and trying to understand where it is in the process is a nightmare.
Right.
When you're in an off-site production methodology that has a clear sequence, a clear line, it's very easy to walk people through.
Yes.
Here's where your project is, and your interests are being protected. That changes the discussion. I'm not talking you into it. I'm assuring you I'm taking care of your fears and your worries, and I'm looking out for you as your business partner.
You want to hear a funny story? One of my first jobs where we did bathroom pods, years and years. Again, I'm almost 50, been around a long time. That's how I beat up my chest when I say I've been around. So I did my first bathroom pod job, and I went to the superintendent and I said, what was the best part about this job? No punch list, it was great, and wasn't this all good? And I was hoping he would say all these things that I used to sell. And do you know what he said back to me? Best thing about the job was I got 7 a day. And I said, what do you mean you got 7 a day? He said, it was the only consistency I had on this entire hospital job. Nothing else was prefabricated. He said, I knew I would get 7 pods a day and I could schedule all my other work around those 7 pods a day. It was the only consistent. And that's what we call, like, chaos to, order theory, that had a very defined scope. And that was his artificial reef in the ocean that he could build his ecosystem around, that product, right? But I love what you said about culture. We have a couple questions. And if you weren't here this morning, we talked a lot about culture. We have to start calling people out here. I think we have a lot of change to do. We can't keep saying the same things and expecting different results, right? So I love Ben's thing about the kill the master builder, by the way. Regarding the playbook, what resource outlines some of the best practices? Who's that question for? Do any of you guys want to answer? Have any of you guys worked on playbooks for owners? And okay, feel free, I can answer, but I think one of you guys should answer.
We serve a lot of clients on program management type roles where we do help set up playbooks for different various use cases. A lot of aviation clients, a lot of very large programs, and it's difficult. It's that the first process of understanding what they need and who they work with, number one,
right,
and what their outcome truly is. So it is a lengthy process to set up their standards, set up their playbook of how they execute their projects, what their contracts look like, what the contract language looks like, and really try to set them up for success long term.
But who asked this? Raise your hand if you're out there. I think the genesis of the question, trying to see if I see you. No, shout out if you're here, was I want to go make playbooks with people. Is there a place for me to understand all the things I need to understand to write playbooks? Is there a resource? So I would say no. I don't know it. We're doing a knowledge base at Autodesk about playbooks and owners right now. That's not out yet, not public. It's something that I've been writing, and because I've been doing playbooks for years, like you guys. I'll take any input from any of you if you want on that knowledge center, because it's open resource. I don't think it exists right now, unfortunately. When you see Sala talk today, to answer that question, she will speak a lot about playbooks. She's a great resource for that as well. Some of these guys with, that are doing it are good resources, but there's not a centralized knowledge base right now anywhere.
I'd actually say there's too many playbooks.
There's too many playbooks.
But in the sense it's going to be the situation, because there's always going to be interpretation. Before computers, when I started my career, there was the green books.
Yes.
That was the playbook of how you start picking parts
right,
and pieces for your design.
Right.
In creating the playbooks that we're building within McCarthy for offsite production processes, part of what we're looking at are things like, other industry vendors out there that are architectural tools, design tools that do similar. Every manufacturer, you go to their websites, they've got good resources as well. Do you recreate that, or do you create a script that people follow? So there's a balance of framework to consistently deliver, but allow enough flexibility for the nuance from one client to the next or one project to the next. But no, I don't believe there is a central resource. There will be competing resources. Even this morning, we're having a conversation where I'd really like ASTM and DIN to have some sort of exchange. So if there's a national standard,
I don't know if I agree with that, but keep going.
but it's the paradigm, right? Of there's different standard industries out there. Is it realistic in our time frame to think that there'll be a global central playbook?
I don't know if there'll be I think, look, my thing is this: how many phone calls do I have to get every week to ask me about where supply chain partners are and how to do this? Like, I'm 50. We said that. I'm old. You're old. No offense, but we're not going to be here very long. So, like, how do we take what we know and put it in a place in a repository people can use that's neutral, that people can get to? That's the thing. And by the way, my problem with a lot of these things that get written and informed, just like the ones I write, are only as good as the people that write them and inform them. Like, I see things all the time that are going around the world with people who knew nothing about integration of prefabrication, and they're writing how to do it, and it's wrong. Can't get it done.
And internally, one of the reasons McCarthy set up the Off-Pro group within our company was to take that on.
Yes.
How do we had one project presenting yesterday about their success stories. How do we make that knowledge around the company?
Right.
So we just centralized the collection and distribution of knowledge, just shuttling of information,
right,
so that we can bring everybody up.
I came to Autodesk to make it neutral so that it could live with all of you guys. Please help me inform that. Anyone that wants to work with me on the Knowledge Center, come to me. We do have a question from the audience, but you can answer that too.
I was going to say just one last thing over here is there has to be a quarterback. Everybody has their roles, and the worst projects of the kind that you come in, and the architect is doing his job, engineer is doing his job, trade guy is doing his job. Nobody's taking on the ownership or responsibility of who is going to quarterback the entire playbook type products.
I know.
Who's gonna champion that? So it's all. The answer is, if nobody's doing it, step up. It's our
Yes.
responsibility to lead that. Talk to your clients, talk to your owners, help them embrace the knowledge, to tell them, hey, this is what is capable, this is what you can do, but somebody has to step up and do it. And just because it's not in anybody's contract doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. It's the most important thing that needs to happen on every job out there. And it's up to us, like I said, to educate folks that if it's not being done, let's do it.
You know, it's interesting. Why do you think owners are now taking more control over this? Because no one has stepped up. Not many have stepped up. Not no one, but not many have stepped up. So they're looking, it's worth it to them. They're realizing your whatever 1% you can save them on a job is not worth them not getting into Africa to build their data centers. That's far more valuable than like you beating up some subcontractor to get a little less off the price. You know what I mean? They're taking more control. I'm going to end on this question. I know we went around on a lot of things. So I love this question. It's a little bit sort of played to this topic, but I'm going to take it because it has the most votes anyway. And it's got a Southern accent. I have to read it like that. Y'all are talking about change and the how-tos. And have y'all thought about the trick is to getting younger people involved? Because right now people have their ways or it's the highway. And I swear, please, if you raise your hand, whoever wrote that, I would like you to be my reverse mentor. And that will be you. We took a picture yesterday together, didn't we? You're now my new reverse mentor. Because see that woman out there that works in BDC? She's like, I know some of these answers, but like you just won't let me say them, and you won't use them, right? Okay. What do we think about? We're all sitting up here going, "Well, it's been this way a long time." Thank you for saying that.
There's a lot that goes into that. One of the things that I think is underutilized is the MEPs. There's some of them that are killing it out there, right? They're doing a great job. They're driving a lot of this through projects, right? We don't educate enough through them. I think there's a lot to learn with our MEPs that are killing it.
They're making everything.
Yeah.
Of course, they have all the information you need.
But that's the thing. We're in the middle of this thing, and there's the top, right? And there's a lot of. You're my MEP. The knowledge stays down here.
Yes.
We need to get that out.
Agreed. By the way, to that point, I'll tell you what I think happens to the people that don't change. This is my answer to you, and then I'd love to hear you all answer before we end. That'll be your soundbite. How do we all change and incorporate diversity and perspective? Hold on. My answer is, I sat in a room with a bunch of GCs, the biggest in the world recently, and the question was asked them, not by me, what do you think the GC of the future looks like in the year 2050? And everyone talked about digitization and all these buzzwords and IPD and lean and all this. You know what one woman said in the room? We don't exist then. We don't even exist. I don't even know why we're having this conversation, because they're shoved in the middle, not providing value. That's what she said, not me. So in the future, if we want to normalize this, if we want playbooks, if we want to have a quarterback, if we want to change, and we want to incorporate diversity and perspective so that we do something different, because we can't keep doing the same stuff we do now because it's not working, give us a soundbite on what to do. Want to start here? Let's start here.
So what I've been seeing is, so I have some great ideas, but I can't implement them because I don't necessarily know programming, or I don't necessarily know this analytical data type stuff. But I have great ideas. But the people that are underneath me are reverse mentoring me now on this idea that, hey, you said this yesterday, we can make this program or this project or doing this type of process, we can make that happen and automate that. And to me, that blows my mind, because that's really what we need to get into. The problem is us older folk don't necessarily know how to do that. But we have the idea of what we can do, what the parameters and criteria need to be to make it work in the field. But we don't, like some of the stuff that Stantec, we have a couple groups that are doing right now. It's absolutely amazing, some of the stuff that they're doing with modules and stuff. And, you know, in that particular case, it's being done with apartments. And I'm coming in as a lab planner saying, you have less variable, you have more variables in an apartment than I do in a research lab.
Give me my soundbite, because they're all going to do a soundbite. So one thing you've got to do.
You got to start involving everybody.
Get involved, get diversity and perspective. You can't have Lauren because she's my reverse mentor. Okay, go ahead. What's your soundbite?
It's all about the people. So the mentoring the younger and the people like us that are old, having those conversations and getting those brilliant minds around the table for each project, learning from each other.
Kurt, what's your soundbite?
Humility. From my personal experience, I was a superintendent in the field at the age of 21. I didn't know anything. So how do you get that? How do you like go to the people that know all the work You have to just go and ask questions and get them to show you, right? They want to show you. And that applies in anything we do, whether it's prefabrication or just regular construction, it doesn't matter. Just go with that humble, like, I don't know enough, I need to learn, and they'll show you, right? And then you can open the dialogue and you can show them a new way, and they'll be ready for it.
Love it. Humility, ask the guys that actually know. Where are my guys in the fab shop yesterday that I was like, you're gonna be my best friends? Where are my guys wearing the baseball hats that were quiet in the back of the room that make friends with those guys? Okay,
Yeah,
yep. Your soundbite.
I'm extremely direct, so speak up.
Oh, what? Say that one again.
Speak up.
I needed to hear Kurt's
Right?
more than yours, but go ahead. What was it? Speak up.
Exactly. So don't be afraid just because somebody is, 7 different levels above you. If you see something that can be improved, talk about it. Don't see it, acknowledge it, and then, start thinking about it and thinking, well, why can't I make this change? Speak up, be vocal about it. That's the recipe for change is start talking about better ways of doing things and do not be afraid to do so.
I love that. I love the 5 whys, by the way, in Lean. I think speak up as well. Let's hear your soundbite.
Fight the powers that be.
What? Why are we not best friends?
Because it's the assumption that, well, it's been done this way for 20 years, so that's how we're going to do it next year. That's normal to how we want to behave. But in reality, all these roadblocks that we put up, well, I can go around it. What's wrong with that?
I love it.
The reference to contracts is dead on. The contract industry, the legal industry is hiding behind. Great, let's find the attorney that will sit down and write the contract that works. Because at the end of the day, the contract's an agreement between me and you, the builder, the owner. What do you want to do? Okay, we're going to outline what we're going to want to do. Great, let's write that contract. So what if it's not the industry standard? We agree that this is how we're going to deliver it. Great, let's do that. So let's have that discussion. That question about that came up with the VDC, and as you were talking about the MEP being held down, I on a couple projects I recommended to the owner, don't hire a mechanical engineer.
Love it.
Tell me what you want your building to do, and let me bring in trade partners that I know can deliver that.
Fight the powers.
My friends who are mechanical engineers were shocked, but at the end of the day, I'm here to deliver to the client. Awesome.
Okay, we're now best friends. We just became best friends. What's your soundbite?
Standardize, start somewhere. You got to start.
Get a ride so I can pimp it out.
You got to start somewhere. And then standardize through configurable products. So everybody has a product they can start with, and they can configure, and they can get optimized, and then go with it. And then keep it, change it. You'll always be changing. But you got to start somewhere. I think everybody gets frozen. And you need to start, and that's the only way. You got to get that journey going.
Awesome. Thanks for the questions and answers, guys, that we worked in on Slido. I really appreciated that. This was a rough one. You guys, you got me as your moderator. Sometimes that's good and sometimes it's bad. But let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you guys so much. I don't know if you're shaking. I don't know if you're shaking hands, but if you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we got to talk.
I know we should.
Yeah, thank you. That was awesome.
Yeah.
My new best friend.
Yes, absolutely.
You're lucky you got Ben, my buddy. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That was good. Speak out, speak up, fight the power.